Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Symmetry, the Singularity Phase II-Xenotaph, out June 9th on Nuclear Blast. This album has 11 tracks, 58 minutes in length, and this is the band's 7th full-length studio album. They are a Swedish progressive melodic death metal band. Now this is part 2 of a 3-part concept trilogy, and anytime I have a concept album in my hand, specifically when it becomes a trilogy, I'm always looking at how it ties itself to the previous record and how many doors does it leave open for the future album. I also look for a sense of beginning, middle, and end. I look for a record that has fluidity in its design, that builds the story, that creates the sense of moving towards a climax, because all of these elements are extremely important in order to make the album engaging all around. Does this album have it? 100%. I honestly really enjoyed the fluidity of this record. I really enjoyed the design. I felt like it had the right ebbs and flows, not just musically, but also from a storytelling point of view. It offers a climax. It's a record that has a sense of progression, then it has a sense of regression at times, depending on where you are within the story. It's very volatile, it's very mobile. It's a record that has kind of a life built in within itself, and the design really enhances the experience of the concept of listening to this album and really enjoying going through each and every single song and getting a little bit of a step closer towards perhaps the finish line is going to be at on record number 3. So a very interesting design, one that works really well, and one that brings value to the overall concept, to the overall storytelling process of the album and of the trilogy. Now once you get into the sound, this record is very progressive in how it comes across. It's not your prototypical melodic death metal record. It still has a lot of melodic death metal elements, of course, but it also has a lot of progressive elements. It doesn't go completely off the rails from that point of view. It stays controlled, it stays within a box or within shapes, and uses the melodic side, the melodic death metal side of the sound in order to propel some more progressive elements that allow you to lose yourself a little bit better in the sound, that allows you to better digest the overall thickness of sound, how robust the overall album is, but it also allows you to better understand where you are within the story. I feel like if this was an album that was traditionally melodic death metal sounding from beginning to end, the approach would perhaps become a little bit cumbersome on the listener. The sound itself would not give you the necessary pockets for you to have other elements so that you can better see exactly where you are and where you're going. Infusing more progressive elements in the overall soundscape definitely breaks this record up, definitely gives you the right pockets. It creates the right ebbs and flows sound-wise within songs from song to song, giving this album a very rich, textured, and layered experience. It's a fun album to listen to because you're never quite sure what's coming around the corner. There's no way of knowing. There's no formulas. There's no repetition. Every song feels very individual within itself, but always connecting really well to one another, because the elements that make a diverse experience from track to track are the same elements sung in and sung out. So it's a very rich sounding album, and I think that's where the fun of this record really comes across. It's an album that doesn't allow you to feel bored by it because of the excitement, like I said, of always feeling like there's something new. And even when you've heard the album multiple times, you still are able to discover certain elements that at first glance maybe went unnoticed. So it's one of those records that has an extreme long shelf life, and that is because of the sound quality. Extremely well put together from a production point of view. The mixing is really well done as well. So it's an album that has quality all around. It has quality in the design, it has quality in the concept, it has quality in the lyrical content, vocal approach, and then the music behind it. The music that really puts a stamp on every single track and allows you to feel like you're navigating through this story really easily, picking up on key elements as you're progressing. The sound really allows you to have a fun experience, an easy experience, an album that, while being very textured, very rich, and very layered, doesn't really force you to go too deep into it. You can listen to it, enjoy it, and take what it gives you. Now, obviously, if you want to get more out of it, if you want to perhaps dive a little bit deeper, try to find some Easter eggs here and there, then you can definitely do that. But it's an album that almost does it in a natural way with repetition. The more you listen to, the more you're discovering without having to force yourself into that discovery mode. Now, there's some elements of the sound of this record that surprised me, either by the positive or surprised me by the negative. I want to start off with the positive, and that was the bass sound. I was not expecting this record to have as good of a bass sound as it does, and I also was not expecting it to pop as often as it does. But I think it's such a nice element because a lot of the suspense that some of the songs have of you not exactly knowing what's happening or what's coming around the corner, most often than not, that experience is better defined by the bass sound than any other element on this record. So while the bass is not in the forefront on every single track, on every single second of every single song, it's noticeable. It has a positive impact in the overall richness of the sound, in the overall sound experience, having a great contribution in terms of how this record moves from an overall point of view. Now, on the downside, the drums, I was a little bit surprised that they didn't have the impact that I was expecting them to have, at least not in a consistent basis from beginning to end. The drums are heavy at times in this album. They do offer a lot of power, a lot of intensity, a lot of aggression, adding into the wall of sound. When the record becomes really heavy and really thick, the drums are definitely helping create that heaviness and that thickness. But I was expecting the drums to have more of an impact, either subtle or direct, in the sound experience from start to end, and it's not the case. They kind of weave. They come in, they have an impact, they weave out, something else is coming in that's overshadowing them, and that's kind of the movement that the drums have from beginning to end. And I honestly thought the album was going to be more balanced from that point of view. Not that it takes a lot away from the quality or the experience of the album, but I feel like there were some moments in this record where you almost forget that the drums are there. You almost forget about them because you're so focused on everything else that they become relegated almost to a secondary role. And I don't think that should be the case at any time on any record. So I was a little bit disappointed that the drums didn't have more of an impact, a consistent impact, sung in and sung out. An element that has a consistent impact sung in and sung out is the guitars. This is a guitar-centric record from beginning to end. Not that I was expecting it to be anything less. I was not expecting this album to be driven by keyboards, even though the keyboards and the orchestrations that the album uses definitely also enrich the experience, definitely create volume, create a cinematic experience, and definitely make also these tracks feel almost cinematic at times. All of that is true, but it's still an album that relies heavily on the guitar sound to make the songs heavy when they need to be, to make them melodic when they need to be, more driven, less driven, more melancholic, more bright, whatever the case might be. This is an album that heavily depends on the guitar sound for the experience that it's trying to provide with every single song. Adding acoustic elements is outstanding, specifically when they use them as layers. The guitar solos on this record, outstanding, really bright, really energetic most often than not, but always adding value to the songs, always bringing a little bit of the essence of the track and then exposing that essence in a more naked and raw format. So I honestly enjoy the guitar sound and the overall diversity of guitar sound that this record has from start to end. And I don't mind having an album like this really depend heavily on the guitars, because you need them to be impactful when it comes to the melodic death metal side of things, specifically with a melodic sound, but also with that thick wall of heaviness. But when it comes to the progressive side, that's always what I'm looking at. How are the guitar sound going to come across? How are the solos? How are they integrated in the tracks? What kind of progressive elements can we see from the guitars that really shapes or expands the volume, size, and even footprint of the songs? All of that was present. This is a great guitar sounding album from start to end. Super consistent in the quality, not in the execution and in the final result. Now, the vocals on this record, there's obviously the duality of the harsh vocals, the clean vocals. I like them both. I honestly really enjoy both, but I feel like this is an album that has more to offer, or at least more of a direct impact with the clean vocals. And this is why. The harsh vocals are there, they add aggression, they add intensity, they change the momentum of where you are within the overall arching story that this concept record is offering you. But the way you pick up on where the story is taking you, the way that you pick up on where you are, where you're heading, how you're going to get there, the nuances of the overall record, the nuances of the story and how you develop that story, that really comes across with the clean vocals. The clean vocals allow you to better connect with that story, allow you to better feel the emotional aspect of that story, and perhaps we're not that far away from being part of that same story. And while the harsh vocals have a great impact and sound phenomenal, this album has a little bit more clean vocals than harsh vocals. At least that's the perception that I have. And I must say that those clean vocals have a more defining impact in terms of understanding the story, the role of everyone within it, and even perhaps our own role as we approach it. So I definitely gravitate more to the cleaner vocals on this record, because I think it's an album that needed them in order to set the table for what the following album is going to be. I honestly see the record from that point of view, and I really enjoy the clean vocals a lot. What a tremendous impact that they have. But once again, not downplaying the harsh vocals, because they were powerful, and we need those in order to exteriorize some of the anger, some of the aggression, some of the intensity, some of the fear that exists within the story, within this record. And sometimes using them both as a duet worked really well throughout the entire record. Now, overall, this is a super textured, layered album. 58 minutes in length, 11 songs. Normally when you have a concept record that is this heavy, that is this deep, an album that really almost forces you to just focus on it 100% in order for you to be able to get what the album has to offer, becomes a little bit cumbersome. This album, because of the quality of the sound, because of the progressive elements in the sound, because of the brightness that the sound has, and the moments that you are allowed to just really breathe in, take a step back, and enjoy the process almost easily, it feels like it tries to simplify itself, and it almost simplifies itself enough to make the record a lot more palpable, to make the record a lot more enjoyable, to make the overall experience a lot smoother. And that is the winning formula for an album that otherwise could have been really cumbersome for the listener. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Overworld. The melodic opening in this song leads in to a vocal duet between harsh vocals and clean vocals. This duet is really interesting. It works so well in the verses. It allows the heaviness of the sound to create volume, and then allows the chorus of the song to be a little bit more stripped down of that volume, of that heaviness, becoming more melodic, with the clean vocals emphasizing that same melody, bringing them together as a duet in the verses, breaking them apart and giving full reign to the clean vocals in the chorus. That is the dynamic of this track. A track that has a lot of ebbs and flows, that has a lot of movement, super dynamic, super fluid, musically and vocally, great guitar sound all around that becomes the glue that holds it all together. Next we have Gridworm. The drums are powerful in this song. I honestly felt like the drum sound on this track was on point from beginning to end, but it still allowed the guitars, this is the interesting aspect, even a song that you feel like the drums have a little bit more oomph, they still allowed the guitars to put their stamp, proving the point that this is a very guitar-centric, a very guitar-driven record. Now, this is also a track that's divided into three parts, into three periods, if you will. The first period of the track is heavy, is a heavy period for the song, musically and vocally. Everything feels aggressive, everything feels intensive, everything is very heavy in terms of how it comes across. And the clean vocals, even though they come through in that first third, they don't have an impact that changes the perception of how heavy that song is in that period of time. Then once you move into the second portion of the song, the track becomes more progressive. Musically and vocally becomes a lot brighter, a lot smoother. You can see the edges around the shape of the song. The track becomes better defined, but as it becomes better defined, it also allows you to better lose yourself in that same definition because it's really beautiful. It's really crystal clear. It's a departure from the heaviness and that big wall of sound that the first portion of the song had. Then you go into the last portion of the song and you see almost a return to the beginning, allowing the track to completely go full circle. So it's a song that has one deep valley with two peaks surrounding it. Interesting design, works well because you're able to move from one to the other easily and seamless. You don't feel anything abrupt. It's a track that has a sense of continuity, even though it has three somewhat different parts, or at least two very different parts with that valley in the middle. Last but not least, Soulscanner. Very progressive opening to the song, and then that progressive opening allows the heaviness to creep into the track. You're still going to have some pockets of clarity. This is a track that tries to be heavy, but not just necessarily creating a sense of heaviness that blankets the entire track. So there's still pockets of clarity that allows you to better digest the heavier moments of the song and better appreciate them as well. It's a song that's very layered, very textured, a deep track. It's not just wide, it's a deep track, it has a lot of substance in it. One thing that I really enjoyed about this song was the addition of the acoustic guitar as a layer in the first portion of the solo. That was such a nice touch. You really have to pay attention, you really have to dive deep into the song in order to get it. But once you do, you just see the incredible impact that melody adds to the overall solo section of this song. It's a heavy song on one hand, it's a proggy song on the other. That solo, that addition of the acoustic guitars really adds a prog vibe to how the song comes across. So it's one of those two sides of one single coin with heaviness and progressive elements, which is pretty much the overall arching sound experience of this record. Heaviness and progressive elements. This is it, Symmetry, the Singularity Phase 2 Xenotaph, out June 9th on Nuclear Blast. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.